you started in 2017. You were a Trump guy, and we have not talked about this before. So I'm very curious. Like, what did your political journey look like alongside that deconstruction journey? Was it like one thing after the other, or was it like, hey, religion's gone, and now I've got to rethink politics? What kind of process was that like for you?
Wow. So I think we mentioned it initially on the last stream that I was sort of trying to become a political activist through 2016. And then when I got into 2017, I started to realize that based on I guess, the end of all the research I was doing in different conspiracy areas, the end of each of those always led to, okay, like this existential question. Well, what are we here for? What should we be doing? And what's the ultimate purpose?
Mm,
And so my political activism sort of transferred into, I guess, Christian activism or evangelism, because I thought that was far more important than arguing about some policy that Trump has or Hillary Clinton's like dossier or whatever, Um, so honestly, when I left focusing on politics and started focusing more on Christianity, I didn't I didn't even talk much politics anymore with my audience or even with friends. We did it occasionally, but when we did, the default position was always alt right,
mm.
hyper conservative. I had this sticker on my car that said extremely right wing on it. And I literally
Wow.
thought that was something to be proud of at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're, still pro gun and, anything conservative ideologies wise was we would automatically assume is probably correct. Now we knew that the party and the platform was far from perfect, and that I didn't never think, well, I mean, maybe in the beginning of 2016, 17, I might have thought Trump was really a Christian, but by,
Yeah.
2018 or so, even as a Christian, I'm like, this guy's not a Christian. Clearly using the evangelical churches and church leaders for his political purposes, and that's it. I
And
think it's
that
funny.
did that bother you? So like at any point when you were like, "Oh, he's not a Christian," but then were you like, "Well, the platform is what matters anyway."
Yeah, it did bother me
Yeah.
actually,
Okay.
because to me, realizing that he was sort of a fraud and a con who was willing to use Christianity for his ends means we can't really trust anything that he's saying and doing. He must have other, reasons for it, or whether that be funding or something else. But so yeah, I kind of got to the place, honestly, by the time Trump was elected in early 2017-ish, I was already like, this whole thing's a mess. I came
Mm,
to the conclusion that politics was a sham, that both parties were, sort of like a Hegelian dialectic,
mm.
build a problem, cause a reaction, insert solution here. And I felt like both parties were doing this to try and just push a narrative. But to be honest and be
Yeah.
fair, my perspective on the Democratic side being that way was very biased at the time. So
Sure.
maybe there was less than I realized at the time, and I just assumed, well, everything the left does is evil.
Mhm.
We thought, and still many Christians today think that the left is literally funded by and ran by these blood-sucking vampires who, are just nothing but full of strange sexual desires, and
Yep.
they want to create a global economy to collapse any individualism we have and
Yep.
build this matrix of sorts. So I used to talk about the spiritual matrix that was being built, that was designed to keep us from really knowing who we really are in Christ.
Oh man. That's so interesting because I think being someone who also was a Christian, I had gotten out of conservative Republican, even, all that sort of stuff by the time Obama came around. With him, I was an Anabaptist, so I didn't vote the first time around. Second time around I did.
Right.
But I started to, for me it was like, well, individualism is anti Christian. I'm
Mhm.
like, it's like against the movement. So I spent so many years trying to talk to and reason with Christians about, especially around Republican ideals. Not
Mhm.
because I was a Democrat, because I don't give a shit about that. I
Right.
don't. But for me, it was like, why do you care so much about this party when they seem to actually be the antithesis of so much of what we believe?
Mhm.
Did you
Right.
start to have some of those similar beliefs?
Yeah, but honestly, I didn't really, those belief changes and the way that hit me didn't really occur until much later. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, for several years, I was so focused on philosophy and theology that I thought politics was just a distraction designed to keep people arguing over nothing and getting nowhere. And so it
Yes.
wasn't until my deconstruction started many years later. So probably, 2022, late 2021, somewhere in there, I started to rethink this stuff. And I really had a blast doing it, honestly. I enjoyed like I don't know, uncovering new information is thrilling for me, and so I
Hmm.
enjoyed realizing that like wait, maybe I'm completely backwards, and if I am, then that's really exciting because I'd love to
Wow.
sort myself out. But so it was kind of like one at a time. Once we realized that Christianity had its flaws and faults and was not literally true,
Hmm.
then my wife and I pretty quickly were like, well, does this mean that there's really no reason for us to have hatred and anger and judgment towards the homosexual community?
Wow.
Does this mean that we really should reconsider some of the ideas that we just took for granted because we thought they were biblically just ideas, even gun control and things like that? I
Yeah.
recently did, and I'm a combat marine. I have firearms in my home. I've taught firearm instruction and all this stuff for years,
Yeah.
and I was always like adamant, Second Amendment. Everyone should have a gun, so that no one will use it.
Yeah.
I know, dude. It's crazy. It's like
No, I get it.
sounds like speaking Christianese too. It's like just so backwards. But so I started to go, well, let's look at the other data. Let's see if there's really truth behind that. And just the gun control issue by itself was a perfect example where we realized that this sort of push that the right kind of encourages is this idea that if they take all of our guns away, then we will no longer have individual liberties and freedoms to protect and defend ourselves against a tyrannical government.
Right.
And this is step one. Taking guns away is step one into creating a socialist or communist environment.
Yes.
And so, as long as we have those guns, then that will never happen. And
Hmm.
additionally, I believed that if, like I said, one on one, from man to man, woman to woman, if everyone was armed, they could defend themselves. It's like an equilibrium thing.
Yeah.
And I just took it for granted until I looked at the actual statistics, and that's like when I left Christianity, I became hyper addicted to statistics
Yeah.
over any sort of qualitative conjecture. I wanted
Yes.
data, and when I looked at the data, it was backwards. It was upside down. And I tried to think my way around some of it, but I really couldn't. The data
Yes.
showed that when there's less people armed, less people are violently hurt. you know,
Right.
the data shows that Norway, Japan, Sweden, the UK, many other countries who have taken away arms don't deal with mass shootings. They don't have they have literally half the level of violent crime, suicide, and all these type of things than we have. So where is this huge threat of all of us being, they say, oh, the criminals don't follow the rules, so they're still going to get their guns, and
Hmm.
then you're just going to be left defenseless or whatever. Well, we don't see that playing out in the other countries.
Yes.
We see peace. And then the other thing is abortion. That was another big issue. And just the idea, it's so funny now in hindsight, the idea that life is sacred, it starts at conception, and there's no excuse ever to kill or unalive a innocent child, etc. And the irony of that now, that God does that all the time
Oh man.
in
Oh
the
my God.
Bible. But the bigger issue for me is not the debate about when life begins, or if a child is viable, or if a girl who's graped should be forced to keep the rapist's baby and raise it. Like, those questions are all also important things to think about. But for
Yeah.
me, it was more about personal rights.
Yeah.
And that's where the switch started to really flip, where I was like, wait a second. All this time, I was totally convinced that the right wing was all about individual rights and freedoms
Mm.
and liberties, and that somehow translates to guns and Trump flags and Budweiser beer, you know.
It is wild when you think about the glaring inconsistencies. And I
Mhm.
think that's what's hard, is that when someone points out a glaring inconsistency, like you started, you're a truth seeker just generally,
Right.
which is why you pursued the path you did with faith and then ultimately with politics, just anything in general. You're like, well, that doesn't work. So it must not be this fully. There's maybe some aspects of truth, but not fully. it's just interesting when you notice those glaring inconsistencies and you're like, well, hold on a second. Aren't you the Liberty Party? But you're taking away books and
Mhm.
you're taking away people's bodily autonomy and you're taking you're the ones taking stuff away. So
Exactly.
help me understand.
Exactly. Yeah. Even with cannabis was another big one. I'm a huge
Yeah.
advocate of medicinal cannabis and even recreational cannabis, for those old enough and wise enough to not be an idiot with it. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
have it legal up here, It's
you have it legal where you're at.
Massachusetts. Yeah, we're
Oh,
fully.
nice, nice,
Yeah.
good, good. Yeah, I really believe it's a
Yeah.
healing herb. I really do. So I'm really into herbology too and holistic medicine, and I've always tried to solve my problems, even autoimmune issues with herbal medicine and food
Mm,
instead of synthetic medicines and drugs and stuff like that. So
yes.
it was really important to me, that we have the liberty as human beings to go out and cultivate and grow and just grab a plant out of the ground and use it to whatever need we want to, because it's a part of nature. And I saw then that it was the liberal states making this available to people,
Yeah.
and people were beginning to heal and use it for its appropriate uses. And it was still the conservative states that were like, no, 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 weed is of the devil, marijuana is evil, and all this, and just holding on to these crazy ideas that are not backed by any real scientific data, just again, qualitative instead of quantitative data,
Yeah.
just conjecture and feelings, and like, oh, the and that's what I noticed too, is people like to sort of stereotype and pigeonhole people and say, oh, well, they only want it because they're lazy or potheads or
Mhm.
whatever it is. And it's like, dude, I got my first master's degree with a 4.0, and I was smoking the entire time. And then I got my second master's with a 4.0, and I was smoking the entire time. And I built my Christian Truthers channel while I was smoking, and I built my and so it's like I'm not buying this whole like kills brain cells, makes you lazy thing. But that was another example. I was just seeing again conservatives taking away liberties, just like you
Yeah.
said. They don't want to let people choose what they do with their own bodies, with their own plants.
Right.
So yeah, once that started to really hit home, again, late 2021, 2022, I started to say, this is exciting. Maybe I was
Yeah.
wrong about every single thing. And honestly, the biggest thing that I really clung to was empathy.
Mm.
Because like we talked about in the last one, I started studying narcissistic abuse and empathy, and myself as a highly sensitive person, empathetic person, what that means for me. And I feel that it's so much more natural for me to love people who are LGBTQIA. Totally more natural. I
Yeah.
had friends in the Marine Corps who were that way. They were in the closet, obviously. Never really bothered me. But the more I became religious, the more I realized, well, these people are sick. These
Yeah.
people have a disease.
Yeah.
These people they're mentally disabled or whatever they have an issue with. But it was so freeing to let that go and say that's not even remotely true. That's not
Mm.
what the data shows. And honestly, I already know hundreds of these people, and they're not sick, they're not grooming, they don't want anything except to just be left alone. So why is it that once again, this liberty party of Christianity and conservatism is just attacking these people for literally no reason?
Right. So you had a sense of you saw their humanity and you didn't see anything wrong with them, but you had internalized a belief that said there was something wrong with them and that they were destined for hell if they didn't
Mm-hmm.
repent or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to let that go, I can see how that would be freeing and exciting.
Very
And
much.
and at the same time, all of it is very disruptive,
Mm-hmm.
especially for people who have built their lives and livelihood around this stuff. And as you shifted, so when you shifted, since you had been focusing the majority of your content and everything on faith and the Bible, did you also address some of these political shifts too, or was it still more focused on that deconstruction of Christianity?
Yeah, so on YouTube, I have not really. YouTube is more of my like my long form study type stuff. I started repurposing TikToks and posting them over there too, but it's more of like my deep dive, 20 minute to an hour long video type things.
Yeah.
And for that, I've only focused on theology primarily, but I really do need to. I would like to make a documentary specifically about my political transformation and social transformation, because so far I've only been doing that on TikTok.
Mm,
And again, like when I started talking about this stuff on TikTok, I had no idea what the response would be. I just expected to be just attacked and slandered and hated. And
yeah.
I was surprised at the amount of support that I got saying, "Hey guys, ex-conservative here. Kind of embarrassed to say this, but I just realized that we're trying to take away your freedoms,
Oh
and
man.
they were very, very supportive. And so now I talk about that as much as I can, whether it be parenting,
Hmm.
uh, gay rights, or women's rights is another huge,
Yeah.
huge one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to talk about that stuff, but I
Well,
haven't.
well, it makes sense because so many people feel like it's a useless conversation.
Mhm.
Like, what's the point in us even talking about it? Because no one's going to change their minds.
Right.
And to see people like myself or you or others who once thought the way that we did be on the other side of it, I think gives a lot of hope to people.
Hmm.
And I also think it's really interesting to see how interconnected that evangelical worldview, which, many of the people who are on the right might not identify as evangelical,
Right.
but their minds have been so formed
Hmm.
by that worldview that it's a natural leap to have all those logical inconsistencies that the Republican ideal sort of offers.
Right.
It's not that. So when you begin to deconstruct and you're starting to notice all these, hold on with this, hold on with that. At what point are you like, well, what can I even trust? Like, what about the way I see the world is trustworthy? And was there any point where you found yourself just like, I think I'm going crazy? Or were you just like, you know what? I'm finally sane. Like, was there any of that spectrum going on for you?
Yeah, yeah. I did do a lot of I had a lot of self-doubt, a lot of questioning of myself, definitely. And I don't know if, like, again, I don't know if there was a single point where there was like a an absolute shift of all things, but yeah, it really felt more like weights were coming off.
Mm,
It didn't feel difficult. Like, it wasn't like, oh man, now I have a whole new paradigm I have to try and explore and figure out and understand. It almost felt natural to remove those things. It's almost as if um, the conservative ideologies I had were uh, sort of difficult to justify,
yeah.
and I only could justify with scripture and with the popular conservative mindset. We all agree on this, so it's got to be true. Plus, the Bible says this and this, so it's got to be true. But I knew deep down that it was difficult to make those arguments, and we would always be on the ropes fighting with actual libertarians about these type of things.
Yes.
Um, and so when I started to realize that this is not correct, and I needed to switch up my ideas, it was actually easier than harder, I would say, to
Mm,
go, okay, this makes way more sense. Like, this
yeah.
is so much easier to just realize that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness means every race, every gender, um, every non-gender, every person, every human, you know,
Yeah.
should have the
Yes.
ability and freedom to make decisions for themselves about what they wear or who they love or if they have a baby and all these things. And that's
Oof.
easier to me to sort of stomach than everything else.
That's incredible. And if you think back, we're in May 31st, 2023. If you think back 2 years from now, you were not saying or believing those things.
No.
And right. And it's just such a beautiful and epic transformation to go from this isolated, we're the ones who are trying to figure this out and get it right,
Hmm.
to just being open to the beauty of all people. There, just the fact that they can make choices for themselves is such a drastic shift
Hmm.
that I have to imagine the reverberations of that shift play out and might sometimes surprise you. I'm
Hmm.
guessing because I know my own experience. Are there times now when you're going along your days or you're talking with Jackie, like your wife, um, and you're just kind of like, how did we get here? Or are we, where are we off to next? Because ultimately, things shift and change as life goes on, and you're
Hmm.
not ever going to be the same, think the same. Like, what
Right.
is that looking for you like for you today? Are you just sometimes baffled by the drastic shift that it's been?
Yes. I am. I think that I've, in my opinion, I've found more, um, I guess you would say it's ironic because it seems like a more stable, sort of rigid, solid ground that I'm on now.
Mm,
Although it's something I arrived at by being willing to be wrong and being willing to change. But
Wow.
I because when I left Christian philosophy and conservatism in general, and I started digging into other, I guess you would say, philosophies of life and worldviews, um, because the worldview I landed on just so happens to be one where I believe now that our our experience is the purpose,
Yeah.
and there is no other real
Yeah.
purpose except to experience what we're experiencing. And of course, there are wonderful qualities and traits in humans that I encourage, which to love and give and share and discover. And these are all wonderful things. And to be willing to be wrong and to be willing to change, all
Yeah.
those are wonderful things. But I think that at the point that I'm at now, I could be wrong and change my mind a million times from now until I die. And I don't think that will change my belief that at the end of the day, if everything we're doing isn't done with empathy and love and compassion for others, and with the realization that we probably never will win this game. It's not
Mm,
the point to win. The point is to play, and the point is to enjoy. And so
mm.
when I was in more of like a rigid belief construct, I thought there had to be a deeper purpose, a
Yeah.
deeper mission. There's something we're waiting or trying to accomplish, and waiting on Jesus to come, waiting for the second Exodus or whatever it was, and waiting for the government to change and waiting for the world to change. And now I don't really feel that way. I don't necessarily believe the world will, I mean, I'm sure it will change,
Yeah.
but I don't believe it will end up in a certain place and it needs to
Mm.
get there. And if we're not on the way there, that's a problem. Whereas before I felt like we're off track. We're not making progress. I'm not making progress, whatever it
Yeah.
is. And so now that lack of requirement for that supposed end state kind of relieves me from being too worried about what what comes next. And
Ah,
so yeah, I honestly just believe that ultimately it doesn't really matter what people believe in terms of where they go after they die, and if God exists and stuff. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. All that matters to me now is, are people's individual beliefs inhibiting the freedoms and liberties of other people? Are they
yeah.
causing damage to other people and things like that? So
Oh, I love
yeah.
that so much. I think I have answered the faith question this way a couple times where I'll say I don't need anything to be true.
Hmm.
Like, and I love that what you said, like just a willingness to be wrong.
Hmm.
I mean, that's such a rare quality in conversations where you hold something to be true, you hold
Hmm.
it in high regard, and you also hold it a little bit loosely. Where you're like,
Right.
if you can show me where it's wrong, I'm happy to engage with that. And that's
Hmm.
a really rare quality, which is why you're where you are today, because you had an openness to, well, maybe that's not the way that it really is.
Right.
Is there anything right now that you're sort of believing that you can't see? I mean, you just addressed it a little bit, but that you're just like, there's just no way this is wrong.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think that there's no way. I see. I don't know if it's like this is a double negative or something. I don't know, but I think there's no way that the Iron Age slash Bronze Age feathered dragon known as Yahweh and his wife Asherah, who came from the pantheon of gods out of Canaan, I don't think there's any way that they had anything to do with creation, with our our predestination, or anything happening in the world today
Mm,
whatsoever. I'm like, I don't know how that could be. I could change my mind on that. I would need Yahweh to do something, maybe.
yeah,
I don't,
to
but
like lift up everything around you and just start
yeah.
to,
And so this goes back to the question I see Christian apologists arguing all the time about the Big Bang Theory or
yeah.
creation versus evolution or whatever, which they're not even against each other. But the point is, I like to just say, like, look, you guys can argue all day long about, intelligent design or whatever you want to do, and that doesn't bring you any step closer to proving Yahweh, the Canaanite feather dragon from the Bronze Age, had anything to do with it. So it's like, I just think it's so funny that they're so heated over this topic of creationism and intelligent design and fine tuning for
Yeah.
decades now, and it doesn't even bring them any closer to the
No,
real
you
issue.
you know what it is, and I've heard this one often because I have fundamentalist family still, And one of those family members will always say, like, back when you started seminary and you started doubting that it was a 6-day creation, I told you, if you lose if you lose Genesis, you lose the whole thing. And so for them, it's like the primary battleground when it comes to we're gonna throw all our resources into
That's
proving
true.
that this is true, because if it's not, we're screwed.
That's
And
true.
so it's not going well for them, I will say. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you're in Florida.
Yeah.
Um, talk about battlegrounds. I mean,
Yeah.
where I am, I have conversations a lot with people who are in the LGBTQ plus community and who are afraid, and then will say, and I'm in Massachusetts, so I feel a little safer. And
Mhm.
yet Ron DeSantis is running for president. He's doing a lot in Florida that is undermining the rights or removing the rights of people who seek gender affirming care. They're removing literature, all sorts of things.
Mhm.
What is that like for you in this moment, to be in a state like that, to know that you guys are sort of at the helm of the national conversation when it comes to LGBTQ plus rights
Mhm.
and how people are having those things removed? Are you engaged in any sort of political conversations around that? If so, what does that look like for you?
Great question. And yeah, another thing that goes along with that is the whole Disney thing.
Yes,
I get
yes,
news about Disney every single day. It's literally 25 minutes from my house to Disney. So,
it's wild.
um, yeah, and Ron DeSantis's feud with Disney is so petty, and it just shows that he literally is making decisions based on vendettas and agendas, and not
Yep.
based on anything that actually matters. I mean,
Right.
him trying to chase away $17 billion of revenue because he doesn't like that they disagreed with him on his "Don't Say Gay" bill is just the like epitome of childishness.
Yes.
And he Ron doesn't give a crap about the economy of Florida and all this. He just gives a crap about making his point.
Yep.
But yeah, they removed a bunch of books. That was super annoying to watch. And I looked
Yeah.
through some of the books they removed, and some of them don't even make any sense. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you use the same criteria they use to remove books, the Bible shouldn't be there. And that
Right.
really annoys me.
It's so true.
It shouldn't, man. It's so full of violence and incest and all kinds of stuff. Rape. I mean, it's
Yep.
bad. It's bad.
Not safe for kids. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I think it's so funny, not to get too off topic here, but I think it's so
No.
funny that they're like, oh, the left is grooming. They're grooming. They're grooming. They're grooming. And it's like, guys, you are grooming.
Right.
If anyone's grooming, it's you. You're grooming children to be forced straight, to be
Yeah.
forced sexist, to be forced xenophobic. You're forcing that on them. You're grooming, literally. The
Yes.
projection is wild.
It
So,
really is. Forget the amount of priests that have been convicted,
right.
and not just priests, evangelical pastors too. It's
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. So it's funny because literally, I'm going to just make a confession here, right? I mentioned earlier that I'm really into holistic medicine
Yeah.
and homeopathic remedies and stuff. So I haven't had a vaccine since 2013.
Wow.
So over 10 years.
Yeah.
None of my youngest daughter has never had a vaccine in her
Hmm.
life. And Jackie, same thing. It's been over 10 years for her.
Wow.
So the COVID thing and the argument and all that around that was for us never really a big debate. It
Yeah.
was just like, oh, well, we don't take that kind of stuff anyways,
Yeah.
period. Like, we won't even take like I could get prescribed and probably should Adderall, but I don't want to take Adderall. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather find something natural, like
Yep.
I don't know, kratom or something.
Yeah.
But so when that whole debacle was going on with COVID and everyone arguing about whether or not it's safe and whether or not you're a sheep if you take it, you're a sheep if you won't take it, if you're
Yeah.
hating everybody and all this. Um, During that time, Ron DeSantis passed a law, or at least some sort of bill or amendment or something, basically saying in Florida, no one's going to be forcing anyone to get a vaccine for any job outside of the medical field.
Mm.
And so for me and my wife at the time, we loved that. We're
Yeah.
like, yes, thank you, Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
And we were still in the midst of deconstructing and stuff. And so we're like, this is good. He's about freedom. He's about individual rights,
Yeah.
And even if I was still conservative, I'd still be saying that because it's starting July 1st, everyone in Florida can conceal carry any pistol they want without any license at all. Starting
What?
tomorrow. June. No, maybe it's July. It's maybe in a month.
Wow.
So he just made it legal. It's like I think Montana or North Dakota or some of these states are like that already. You can buy a gun easily. You can tuck it into your waist pants and throw your shirt over it and go anywhere you want. No license, no concealed carry, which is crazy for me because
Ugh.
I've had concealed carry permits before, and you have to go to school and do training and do tests and all this to get one, and you have to re up it every couple of years. So now it's just like here, everyone can have guns and go run around with them.
Oh, that's
And I was,
wild.
yeah, like when I was a conservative, I would have I'd have been like, "Yay, thank you, Ron DeSantis, freedoms and liberty for all," and all this.
Yeah.
Um, but now, being on a completely different end of the spectrum, we're
Mm.
scared. We're literally
Yeah.
scared. I mean, we have work sites that are empty because the the I mean, I don't even know what percentage. I don't want to overestimate or underestimate, and I don't want to generalize either. But obviously, there is a ton of labor in Florida that stems from Mexico,
Yeah.
and
Right.
excellent people, excellent community, excellent everything. We love these people, and they've been extremely helpful to the growth of the economy in Florida. They work at Disney, they work at construction sites, they work at Amazon, they work everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you even so much as house undocumented family member, then they get deported and you go to jail. So there are families who are legally working here,
Wow.
who have been legally working here for years, who are leaving because they got cousins, uncles, friends, brothers, sisters, daughters who aren't legal, who don't have a birth certificate or whatever the heck. And so now they're like,
Wow.
well, we either split our family up or we all leave.
Oh,
So they're all leaving. And now there's these TikTokers running around filming all these empty construction sites, half finished neighborhoods, half finished like department stores, just project left, materials left, laying all over the place.
wow.
So we're gonna have, I think we're gonna have a massive labor shortage. But even over and above that, that is just like, that's racist. It's
Yes.
like it shows zero empathy for the people and the families who have been living here and working here for all this time.
Wow.
And now they're just going to give guns to everyone. And now they're taking all the literature off the shelves in schools, where if it has anything to do whatsoever with just acknowledging that gay people exist,
Yeah.
you know, and the list goes on. And now they're picking a fight with Disney. They're going to push that money out of the state.
What a
So
mess.
we went from feeling very safe and happy to be here. We're like, oh
Mm.
yeah, no masks for us, and no vaccines for us. And again, I know that's triggering for some people, and I
Yeah.
apologize. I completely understand both sides of this argument, and
Yeah.
I do not think anyone's stupid for wearing a mask or being vaccinated. That's not my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
We just stayed home and didn't go around people, whatever. But now we feel unsafe. Now we feel like Ron DeSantis is single-handedly trying to like, I almost like wonder where's he going with this? Like, what's his plan? Is he trying to like crash the housing market so that all his rich friends can come scoop up all the real estate?
That's a great question. It's funny because this is where when people will be like, oh, just acknowledge both sides are the same. I have such a hard time because I don't consider myself like a Democrat through and through, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
the situation you just described is dire. It's
Yeah.
dire. And it's
Yeah.
not and it's not like we find the same kinds of rhetoric on the left. And that's where even with AOC, if you're not a fan of her, anybody, like she's still, I mean, she is advocating for justice for oppressed people. That's her big
I
push.
love AOC. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
awesome.
Right. And so like you've got that end of the spectrum, and then you've got people like Ron DeSantis and Trump who are the stalwarts of the Republican Party.
Mhm.
So while I think it's interesting to see this shift away from that and for people to be like, well, hold on, I want nothing to do with all this.
Mhm.
People like you, myself, others who are waking up to that. Do you find for yourself or for other people that have also deconstructed just a full swing over to going from Republican to Democrat? Because I actually really appreciate what you just described. I appreciate that you're like, well, we don't really do vaccines because XYZ. You've thought that through. There's solid reasoning why
Mhm.
that anyone could have like a really intellectual conversation about.
Mhm.
And you're not going to just be like, no, well, this is the Democratic policy, so I want to fit in.
Right.
And I appreciate that, like, nuanced, this is my worldview
Mhm.
and this is what I care about. This works for my family. Do you find that you're thinking about, well, I don't want to just fit neatly into this camp? Or is that not a part of your thought process? You just want to find out what the truth is?
Yeah, the second one for sure.
Yeah.
there's still policies, and I don't know if I can name any off the top of my head, but there's still policies that I see the Democratic Party pushing or the left pushing that I'm like, I don't know if I can get on board with that automatically. So it is a little frustrating because I think we naturally want to sort of congregate around people who we think are going to be like-minded and have the same ideals.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, liberals are more like-minded to me than they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still see debates and arguments about this and that where I'm like, it's not about conservative or liberal. It's
Yeah.
about, I just don't agree with this point or that point. So
Yes.
yeah, it is a little frustrating because I'd like to just jump in and put the sticker on my truck like I did with the with the other side.
It's
Uh,
easier that way.
I
But you can just
know.
like check the box and it's just nice and easy.
Yeah.
I find that, I've been doing a lot of anti-racism content, which is what I did when I was a pastor. I mainly did a lot of racial justice work.
Awesome.
And so like I started off with deconstruction, and that's still, I see them as hand in hand.
Hmm.
But the thing I notice the most is that when you talk about anti-racism or LGBTQ plus folks, you'll get people saying, "Oh, you Democrats are all the same," or "you leftists."
Hmm.
But what you said earlier in this conversation about empathy
Hmm.
is really what this is about. That this is not
Absolutely.
about left, right. We're talking about compassion and empathy for people who have not received that, who are marginalized, who are spoken against. And ultimately, if that's your driving ethic, then it seems like, and I don't know, you can, if you have examples from the other side, it seems like that would align you more often with liberal thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue against that, in my opinion, because,
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, one side's taking away rights and one's trying to preserve or give them to people. Um,
And do you
but
find
yeah,
people pushing you on that? Do people come back with you? I know you're doing, yours is a lot of deconstruction content, but
mhm.
do people call you a leftist, liberal, all that kind of stuff in your comments?
Yeah, they do. They do. And honestly, I already know from just experience being a micro influencer on the internet that the ad hominems and stuff or the assumptions are just, they come with the game.
Yeah.
But it's it's even worse than that in a way, and I want to say there's a caveat to worse. I
Mm,
say that it's worse because they don't just say, "Oh, you're a leftist. Oh, you support gay rights. Oh, you think women should have equal rights in work and equal pay, and oh, you don't think women should be a slave to the man." I wish they would say that. That'd be a pretty good, accurate representation of what I'm saying. Yeah,
right.
but instead they say, "You are gay. You have you're look at you, you're transitioning right now with your long hair and your nose ring. Uh,
Whoa.
you are a simp. You have no power over women and they overpower you. And so you are just doing what's easy for you. And this is how convenient for you that you can let your wife boss you around." So it goes way beyond. And that's I don't so the reason I say I got to be careful by saying that that's worse is because
Yeah.
whether you support it or whether it's you, it's the same. We fall. It's worse for the people who really are like that and they're being attacked. And I'm not even really most of the things they said.
Mm,
But the fact that they're attempting, for me as an empathetic and sensitive person, it's worse for me personally because they're
yes.
attempting to, uh, I guess, attack me or strawman me or make me seem in what they think is immoral, right? They
Mm,
want they want me to seem immoral because it's an easy way to knock me off my. They can just ignore my arguments if they're like, "Well, you're just saying all this because you want to be gay now, and now you get to be gay because whatever." So that's extremely frustrating, and
yeah.
it's frustrating for me because on the one hand, my reaction is to be like, "Look, I'm straight. I have a
Mhm.
wife of 10 years. I have 4 kids. I would absolutely hold a woman's purse for her for a few minutes if I need to. I don't care. I listen to InSync, bro. I always have. Like, I don't care. But it's annoying because it's like, on the one hand, what if
Uh,
I was a gay simp transvestite?
right.
Oh, Does that change what I'm saying in any way, shape, or form? No. But on the other hand, it's like, dude, you're
No.
not even correct. You're making bad assumptions about me, just like you make bad assumptions about everybody else. Because
Right.
I think if you can classify us all as being immoral, then you don't have to listen to our arguments, you
That
know?
that's a really great point, Justin. And I wonder for you if this is the case where you have come onto this other side, and we always grew up, and you were an evangelist, so you were always talking and trying to get people to convert, to change their
Mhm.
mind, repent, all that sort of stuff. But now, to me, what I hear over and over again from this conversation, from the last one, from some feedback I've heard from some people, is like it's a healing journey that you're
Mhm.
describing. And when you get those kinds of comments that bring you, like, rip you back down into one health, it's like, I've had comments where I'm like, are we 12? Like,
Right.
I'm not 12. This doesn't hurt me the way that you want it to, but
Right.
it's frustrating because I'm
Right.
trying to have a conversation with you.
Right. Exactly, exactly. It's not that what you're accusing me of is terrible. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care. It's the fact that you're trying to make accusations instead of rationalizing and using logic to
Right.
have an adult conversation. It's
Right.
just
It's got to be uber frustrating to hear those kinds of comments again, not because you're like, well, that would be bad if I were those things,
right.
but because I'm trying to engage in some kind of pursuit of something more human, more whole, more healthy. And ultimately, it's us living out, you living out your healing journey in public,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
It is. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're putting that stuff out there and you're hearing from people that don't want you to heal because that means something, that triggers something in them, does it at all, like, what are the things that come up for you? Is it anger, hurt, frustration, sadness? Like, what are some of the things you feel when you get those kinds of attacks?
Yeah. I mean, again, I like to be honest, so I'm not perfect. And some people are so persistent. And here's the way I see it. What someone says to me, whether or not it has real meaning that applies to me, is less important to whether or not I get irritated
Yeah.
as their intent.
Yeah.
And so when I see the intent of people to try and do and say things about me and what I am and what I believe, that makes me very angry.
Yeah.
It makes me very angry. A lot of people say things to me. Look, I'm a black belt in Marine Corps martial arts, combat veteran, been doing martial arts my whole life. Like, I I'm not saying I want to go in the octagon. I'll get broken in half. I don't weigh enough anymore. But you know, Joe Rogan, don't fight me, right? But but like that's not what I'm saying. But
Right.
the point is like I've proven enough to myself, you know, traveling the world,
Yeah.
fighting in combat, flying around on helicopter, fast roping, going on crazy long hikes, and just overcoming challenges that are physical and difficult.
Hmm.
That I can do those things. That I have the alpha, which is just a construct, by the way.
Yes.
That I have the alpha to accomplish whatever alpha thing I need to,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and I've never had a problem like my relationship with women. My wife currently, my ex-girlfriends, my ex-wife has never been one where like some puppy dog begging for some nookie, like it's always been like me running around being like, look at, look at all the cool shit that I do. We should mate,
Yeah, you're
It's
right.
been the classic traditional, like conservative, like I guess you would say traditional, like, nature flex thing.
Yeah, the way
Let's
you were trained to be.
Right, right. So it's not like again, it's just a mischaracterization of who I am and the way I
Yeah.
am with people in general and stuff.
Mm.
And so again, it's not that it matters what my approach to getting laid is or
Yeah.
what my approach is to just getting along with. And that's the other thing for many guys on the alt right, super far right, their relationship with women only involves sex. To
Yes.
them it's all about the power dynamic, the
Yes.
sex, whether or not she's giving it to you, whether or not she's hot enough, is she high value, does she have a job, what is she giving
Yes.
you, like all this stuff. It's not about a friendship and a partnership of equals. It never was. And so to them, there has to be this power dynamic that's
Yeah.
clear. The man's got to be covered in muscles and walking in the front while three women line up behind him, carrying his black belt. Some women have been conditioned or they've been raised in environments like that to where they do think that's attractive. They do want a
Yeah.
man that, um,
Yeah.
and of course, I think every woman would agree that to some extent they like when a man takes initiative or has
Hmm.
ideas or plans things or takes,
Yeah,
and
of
shows,
course.
yeah, who doesn't like that to
Right.
stays healthy or whatever. But generally speaking, like those aren't the things that truly matter long term to both
Yeah.
sexual attraction and just having a real relationship, like an actual relationship
Yes.
where you support and love each other. And there's a quote from I don't know if you listen to hip hop or not, but I love
I
hip
do.
hop.
I
I
do.
write I write rap and stuff. I love hip hop.
No
Okay,
way. I didn't know this
yeah,
about
I
you.
have 4
Okay.
songs on the internet. They're kind of
Sick.
embarrassing, but so there's a new Jack Harlow song, and
Yeah.
I think it's with Doja Cat or something. And
Yeah.
there's this one line where she says, "He's got me on a leash because he said no strings." It's one little line she just put in there. He's got me on a leash because he said no strings. And so I like remember the other day talking to my wife and being like, that's actually genius because what she just said is because my man isn't forcing me
Hmm.
to do something, I'm putting myself on a leash and handing him the handle.
Wow.
And this is what I wish more like of these wannabe
Yeah.
alpha incels would understand is like, dude, calm down, lower yourself down a bit, equalize yourself with other human beings
Right.
that just so happen to be people you want to have sex with. Like, become their equals, love and support and defend them, and
Yes.
they will love and support and defend you. You guys will have wonderful sex or whatever it is you're looking for. But if the whole intent is just to have sex and treat your woman like crap, then no wonder you guys aren't getting laid. Like you just
Right.
can't. That's not going to work for most people,
No.
and it's definitely not going to work long term for anyone. So yeah,
It's
it's just it's ironic because if you give people more freedom, they'll be more likely to,
well, there it is.
yeah,
Okay. No, that's so spot on. So I'm gonna
yeah,
throw something Bible related at you. I love this one because I think there's a lot of ancient people ask me all the time, can you still use the Bible for anything? I'm like, I don't have a choice. It has such an influence over my life. I don't know who I am without some of the wisdom I've garnered from the Bible. I love the book of Ecclesiastes. I don't even know how it got in the Bible because it's just
that is a good
doesn't
book.
um also the first 3 chapters of Genesis are quite brilliant in the sense that it's about you get to choose between life and knowledge of the tree of good and evil. So either judgment or life.
Mhm,
So you can put yourself in this position that will lead you to this path that we're on, which is I judge you, which I think makes me better. You judge me, which you think makes you better. We're at war with each other.
mhm,
Right. So
mhm,
to me, that's like, oh, that's a brilliant piece of wisdom right there. Very, very like, or you can live and let live. And
right.
when you're in this healing process that you've been describing, here's what I can think of when I hear what you've described to me is this I am cleansing myself or undoing all this judgment that's been placed into me, all this bullshit, all this like, you have to think this way or else you're damned or you're a simp or you're less than, or you name the insult or the condemnation. And you've relinquished that. And it's like, it's religion, it's politics, it's gender, you name it. You're just checking off, wow, all these ways they were affecting me. I have to imagine from what it sounds like to me, from not just what it sounds like, my own experience, it's like it's all too easy for us to be dragged back down and to be like to validate in any way what people say about us when the truth is that they're operating out of this antiquated way of looking at the world, and at some point you can't engage with it anymore.
Mhm,
It doesn't produce any fruit within us. And
right.
so I just wonder, not necessarily how does the Bible impact you or anything like that, but these conversations, do you find them with those people? Do you find them to be roadblocks to healing, like pauses for you to feel like bad about yourself or question your journey? Or are they confirming? Is it like, no, yeah, that's actually helpful to see that you think that way because I don't want that anymore.
Yeah, I'd say that there was a period in my healing process where it would have been a roadblock for me.
Yeah.
Um,
To engage with that
y-
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I was I was already struggling with self-worth, self-value, and purpose, and things like that. And I was already like at a boiling point, essentially. With I got to a point where I couldn't take in any more criticism. Literally, that's why I
Yeah.
had to go offline and just process the criticism I've already received, and
Yeah.
also just decide for myself what my worldview is. But now I'd say it's more on the confirming side,
Yeah.
where I I take a few minutes, or sometimes I take a lot longer, and I'll put together a little study, or speech or something, and I'll share it with people. And I gotta admit, to this day, no matter what I'm posting about, when I hit submit or post or go live or whatever, there's a part of me that's like,
Mm.
I wonder if they're gonna debunk the shit out of this. There's a part of me that's like, I wonder if this is like gonna blow up in my face. And I still feel that way every single time I post.
Wow.
But what happens is, I wait, I look at the comments, I look at the reactions, and it's over and over and over. It becomes a source of confirmation instead.
Mm.
Because if there was a logical, rational, reasonable response, or even a biblical response, a philosophical response that made sense, that made what I'm saying or believing, or hypothesizing about null, then I would feel like maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I'm making a too big of a sum. I'm grasping at straws here. I got to slow
Yeah.
down and make sure I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But instead, I hit that button, I hit submit, it goes live, and I see, for one, a ton of wonderful, knowledgeable people like you who have experience, and like all other creators, PhDs,
Yep.
seminary pastor, or been to seminary, or pastors, whatever, uh, who have all the experience, and they're coming in and they're like, wow, that's head on the nail stuff right there.
Mm.
And then I go, okay, well, of course, my peers agree with me. That's wonderful. But what about the Christian scholars? What are they going to say to my stuff? And inevitably, it's like always like, just either moving the goalpost, a straw man, an ad hominem, changing the subject. And I'm like, okay, this is confirmation for me, because I just laid out something that's very like unemotionally factual from the scriptures, and you can't provide me an unemotional factual response. You just get really pissed off. So when that person calls me gay or a
Mm.
woman, someone called me a woman yesterday. I
As
just, I
though
just,
it's as though it's an insult.
I know, I just laugh now. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I got him. I got him. Literally. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now when that comes in, Jackie's like, oh, you pissed them off, man. You got them this time. They can't say shit except talk shit.
It's when you get under their skin that way that's
Yeah.
like, oh man, that did that to you. For me to talk about this thing that has nothing to do with LGBTQ plus people or women,
Yeah.
that got you to call me a woman,
Right. Yeah,
to
exactly.
undermine what I'm saying.
Yeah, you just confirmed everything I thought was true. I mean, literally, that you have no rationality for your belief. You just make emotional decisions. And like, and that goes back to, yeah, I think at the end of the day, like I've been asked before too, is like, is it worth it for you to trigger all these people? Because I'm making a lot of people mad.
Sure.
And I think it is,
Yeah.
because I'm not trying to do them any harm. I don't want them to hate themselves or feel bad. I don't want them any of those things. I want them to do what I did
Yeah.
and go, whoa, why am I so triggered by this?
Yeah.
What is, okay? I'm shaking here. This atheist says something that I don't have an answer to, and I'm pissed, and
Yeah.
I'm sad, and I'm angry, and I'm full of adrenaline. And I want to just tell them that they're gay. But for me, that translates into process a day later, 2 days later, a week later. And I'm like, shit, maybe they're right.
Yep.
Like, because I cannot answer this. This is too tough. So I hope that at some point, some of the things I say that trigger people initially will sink in over time. But yeah, when the initial trigger hits and they go off, you got to be like, I know, man, I know. Calm down. I've been there.
I've been there.
I know.